Good evening, everybody. Really appreciate it. Last meeting, we obviously bid farewell and said goodbye to some great friends, but today we get to welcome new ones. Jess and Josh, really happy and excited for you guys to be here and be part of the team. You guys are going to be great additions.
Thanks.
So thanks. Great, good for you to be here.
Appreciate it.
With that, can you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Public audience. Any public audience? Anybody? Right. Starting off easy. I like it. Thank you.
Watch it closely.
Great. Then why don't we just roll right into committee reports and communications?
Do we do public audience? Did you already do that?
Yes.
I sat down. It took me 2 seconds to sit down. Wild crowd.
Hi.
Okay, so at Latimer, 8 classrooms and 2 special education spaces transitioned smoothly into their new classrooms on Monday, and construction is still ahead of schedule. At Henry James, they announced their winter musical, SpongeBob Jr., very cute. And in recognition of former Henry James science teacher and current high school teacher Elaine Kotler winning the HMH Lighthouse Award last spring for her extraordinary impact, authors of The Lighthouse Effect visited Simsbury High School freshmen. And then over at Simsbury High School, the new director of music, Lisa Abel, had her last band concert on December 5th. The orchestra concert and choir concerts are the 14th and the 19th, respectively. And honor societies are currently hosting a Stuff a Cruiser event in conjunction with the Simsbury Police Department, which will donate toys to children in need. And winter capstone presentations for seniors and juniors are occurring this week. And then lastly, all of the schools had a really successful PJ Day for the kids on Friday, December 8th, and they raised several $1,000s for children with cancer at CCMC.
Great, thank you. Josh, anything for tonight?
Nothing.
Nothing, but thank you for having me and happy to be here.
Great. Brian?
I'm all set right now.
Lydia?
Yeah, of course. Actually, you did have something to report, both of you.
Okay, we do.
We went to Cave.
Yes, we went to last week. Excellent event and very well.
Saving it for you, Lydia.
I didn't mean to take your thunder, but yes, Josh and Jessica attended the CABE orientation with about 200 other new board members that were recently elected around the state for the new board member orientation. So what did you think about it?
I thought it was very well attended. I was only able to stay for the first part, but it was really interesting. Great speakers, and interesting to talk to other board members from other towns to hear some of the issues that they're facing and the way they handle issues in their districts.
Good, good. How about you, Josh? Anything?
Yeah, I thought it was well done. The sessions I was able to attend, it was insightful, kind of hearing from others on kind of do's, don'ts, kind of learning curve stuff. So a good way to get started. So
Good.
appreciate it.
Good. All right, more to come. So, just on the legislative front, we had a legislative meeting last week, and just some of the, as we are going through the process now for the legislature for February, we're really kind of consolidating a lot of our legislative priorities. So we're down to about 5 for legislative priorities, and one of them is the funding to support the need for the counselors and mental health, as the ESSR funds are going to be ending soon, as we all know. The other one, which was a big topic, was to allow option to phase in the implementation of the kindergarten start date. There's been a lot of controversy with this around the state and around boards about how to handle this, especially with pre-K slots that are filled, and many towns do not have pre-K's facilities in their area. Another one was invest in the programs for the training and hiring and retention of diverse backgrounds of educators. And a big piece of it is the rests have programs called Grow Your Own. And CREC is one of those that has a very large program with a cohort in its 5th year. So these are areas that we're talking about. A big one, I know you'd mentioned last week, Sue, was about the reading program, and then we're talking about the flexibility of the implementation of the reading program mandate. So that's another thing that's coming down the pike. And then there's a special education task force which hasn't met. So, in the whole entire year, but anyway, this is going to be hopefully coming up in January to meet again. So that's going to be another big ticket item. So that's where we are. We are hoping no new mandates, because just these alone are the ones that every district is concerned about. And this is something that we do want to relay to the legislators, because it's a short session. So this is something that is really going to be, hopefully, be in their bucket to look at, because we can't afford to have anything new come down the pike at all at this rate. So, because we end in May, early May, so that'll be it. And then, of course, whatever there will take place July 1st. So these are just the few that we kind of narrowed down, but they seem to be the ones that resonate the most around the state. So we'll be hearing more about these.
Thanks. Sure.
I don't have anything.
I'm all set.
Hi, I'm going to report on our curriculum meeting that we had. We had a curriculum meeting on December 5th, and we discussed our EduPlanet. On our website, we have a curriculum-based EduPlanet where you can go in and look at the courses, and it's available, and you can go in and look at the courses and know what the standards are, what the curriculum is, and how it plays out throughout the grades, K through 12. So we have it set up in the organizational faction is that every year we work with different groups. So this year it's going to be social studies, school guidance, and art. So we'll be following their information. The object is to have every discipline go through these 3 phases, and so people can, and parents in the community can know how our standards align. Social studies is working on implementing new statewide standards. Another mandate the state has, we're shifting statewide standards across the state, and we have more inquiry-based classes. And so we are working on that piece. The school counseling is going to work on defining their guaranteed experiences 9 through 12, tied to their standards. And the art department does a lot of differentiated teaching, and they're going to be being able to express that and be able to show it so it can be helpful to everybody and other courses as they go. We also have, you've heard before, we've spoken of it before, the K-3 reading requirements of the state have changed. They've become mandated that we all address them and we all become part of the state standard. They have created a standard. They've given us 5 options. We have asked for a waiver. We are one of 140 districts out of 169 towns to ask for this waiver, and because of the hardworking team we have with Betsy and Sue, who else am I forgetting? And Matt and
We're going to hear a little bit more about that in the elementary
so
update.
they can
We'll
tell
get all
us
the
more.
details.
So our team got the waiver. They met with the state and we have received the waiver. So a lot of hard work that's gone into that programming and the science of reading in our district, and we're very proud of them.
A transitional waiver. So we'll discuss a little bit more about what that means and kind of next steps for Simsbury.
That's my report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. So Sophie mentioned that we have our capstone presentations. We have 2 main times during the year, one at the first semester end, and one at the second semester end. So a lot of incredible capstone presentations that are occurring this week and then at the end of the school year. And we also had an hour of code this week. We're engaging in the hour of code. So many of our high school students will come to the elementary schools and do various activities around programming and coding. So that's in the works. That's been really a part of what we do, a little bit of a tradition here now in Simsbury. So exciting.
That's great.
Nothing for this portion of the meeting?
Amy?
I do. So just a reminder that we have our tri-board next Tuesday. For prepared items, we'll take a look at our fixed costs. We'll go through, the Board of Finance has prepared a brief presentation. We'll be looking at our capital overview. There's a new 12-year capital plan that's coming out. And then we'll take a look at the draft budget calendar. That packet will be going out tomorrow.
Great. Budget season's right around the corner. Nothing from me. You're going to obviously hear from me more than you probably ever wanted to, so I'll keep my comment short. But I just wanted to say one thing about process. We heard last time that it was highly suggested that we needed to take a vote on the capstone regarding a recommendation concerning our now 2-meeting curriculum committee. That is not the case. I just want to make sure everybody's clear. that we didn't change policy, so no vote was counted or no needed. I guess if we wanted to reaffirm the policy, we could have, but there was nothing necessary at that time. So just wanted to clear that up. Mr. Superintendent?
Wanted to welcome Diana Izzy here, newly elected Board of Selectmen member and the Board of Education liaison.
Great.
So certainly
Awesome.
familiar with our school district and
Welcome.
has been a great partner
Absolutely.
over the years. And just one thing, Sue and I had a chance, we got invited to John Roberts' AP seminar class
Great.
this week and got to sit in and provide feedback and have dialogue with kids on their student projects, which was really wonderful. Very, very high level kind of inquiry-based projects that it was nice to get in and see what's going on. We also, to piggyback on Amy, have started our kind of program-based budget and principal-based budget conversations. We're about halfway through at the building level, and we'll build that up to you in our workshop and presentation starting right after the first of the year. So we are on our way with budget.
Absolutely.
All right. That's all I got.
Which will be nice and smooth.
Of
sail, right?
course.
Of course. That's what I thought. This is the way I like to start things. So, moving on to recommended actions. First thing on the agenda is the election of officers. We start with secretary and move up. So let me start by making a request to open the floor for nominations for secretary of the Simsbury Board of Education.
I move that Sharon Thomas be nominated for Secretary of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I screwed that up. That was just the vote. Let's start this again. That was just on the vote on closing the nominations. So I'm sorry. So now we need to close the nominations for the Secretary of the Board of Education.
Lydia.
So-
I need a motion
Yeah.
to elect.
Elect. No, okay, so now we need the motion to elect, since that was the vote to close, sorry, bear with me here, people. That was the motion to close the nominations. Now we need to actually do the election. So can I get a motion to, on the motion on the floor?
Yes, move
Thank you.
that Sharon Thomas be elected as Secretary of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Thank you.
We got the format
Congratulations.
down.
There we go. I think Susan had the same problem, so just.
We've all had the same problem.
All right, now let's try this again, people. I need to request to open the floor for nominations for Vice Chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Okay, I would like to move that Jennifer Batchelor be nominated for Vice Chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're closing the vote, all right? We're closing the nominations. That's the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Now
Elect her.
we need to elect. Right.
Yeah, yes, you do.
So I
The
move,
anticipation is thick.
I'll get there.
Bad people.
first night, right?
This will get much smoother. Trust me.
I move that Jennifer Batchelor be elected as Vice Chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Second.
Great. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Jen.
Good team so far.
No, I don't know about this last one. Now, can we open the floor for nominations for Chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education?
I move that Jeff Tyndall be nominated for Chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
I will second that.
It's going so smoothly so far. Are there any other further nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Are there any further nominations? Okay,
Second.
Jen.
Jen?
Oh, I was waiting for you to close the nomination. Okay, I got it, all
So
right.
we're closing the nominations
Okay.
for Board of Ed.
I got it now. All right, move that Jeff Tyndall be elected as chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
That's you. Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm second. Reading.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Phew, congratulations.
All right.
Wow.
First order of business. Complete.
Yeah, but I do, if I could just quickly say,
Yeah.
I do want to say, I don't take that vote lightly or for granted. you know, it's a very humbling experience following in the footsteps of Susan, Tara, Lydia, Jack Sennett before her. Those are some big giants in the education community in this town, and I again, don't take this lightly. So thank you all. With that, can we get an approval of the minutes for November 28th, 2023?
I'll move to approve the minutes from November 28th meeting.
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Moving on, you have the 2024 Board of Ed schedule in your packet. We actually do have to vote on this. So can I get a motion on the schedule that's before you in Exhibit 3?
Move that the Board of Education set their 2024 meeting schedule as outlined in the December 12, 2023 Board Exhibit.
I'll second.
Hey,
Nice job. Woo.
any discussion? Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next.
All right, yeah, we have Neil with the annual enrollment projections, which is really kind of the kickoff to budget in terms of how our enrollment will reflect, you know, future staffing needs, and with some interesting things going on with the kindergarten legislation that Lydia mentioned that Neil's going to touch on tonight.
Do we need a motion for me to open the report? Just go.
No, that would be fine.
And just
Just keep
go.
going.
Full humor tonight.
Yeah. So,
Spicy.
I'm going to try to present this pretty quickly. It's it's a pretty routine process annually now. In terms of what where am I going here?
Oh, is it being finicky?
Am I frozen there, Katie? This is going backwards, right?
Yeah, that's the last report.
Am I at the end?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's 27.
Oh, there we go. Now I'm at the
That's why it wasn't.
There we go. Now I'm good.
Should be.
I don't think you
No.
clicked it to the first
It
slide.
looks like it's still at the
You're
end.
still in the back.
back.
You're still
Let
towards
Let
the
me
end.
just do it here. I'm
There
gonna
you
go
go.
this
There you
way.
Yeah, just do it.
Oh, now you're giving away.
Everybody look. Everybody close your eyes.
Close your
If
eyes.
anybody read it that quickly, they're doing well. So this is a annual process that after our October 1 report, I feed the information to our demographer who has been NESDEC for the last couple of years. People on the board were familiar that we used NESDEC for many years. We briefly used another demographer through a company called Malone and McBroom before Malone and McBroom decided not to do this business anymore. And then we went back with NESDEC. This year I'm going to show you I'm going to show you NESDEC's projections. They have a system where you feed them your current numbers, they look at your last 5 years of numbers, and they turn around a projection for you in a fairly short amount of time, all based on sort of the formulas on history. They were not comfortable really getting involved with the new kindergarten legislation. So what I'm going to do at the beginning is show you first just what NESDEC turned around to me, and then get a little bit into what we think will be happening more accurately with some of the kindergarten numbers due to. So first 6 or 7 slides is just what NESDEC gave back before any adjustments. So we start with just the historical. This is actually not a projection. This is the last 5 years. So you can see where we were with the lowest number, 3960, being during, that's the year we came back from COVID. Expected a little dip and have kind of been increasing since then, up by about 150 students since we hit that little bit of a lower spot 4 years ago. Where is this headed? So now, instead of the past 5 years, you look at the next 5 years, and you can see from 4104, where we are now, in October of 2023, this is what they would be predicting for the next 5 years, which for next year they're predicting 4163, and then I'm going to alter that number a little bit based on kindergarten in a bit. But basically, if you say look at this chart, it's averages about 2% a year, so that if that of an increase, if that holds true, take 4,000, 10% of that is 400 kids. You're looking at about a 10% increase over 5 years. That would not be an atypical, it's not an atypical level of growth. It sounds like a lot when you go, wow, 10% in 5 years, but at 2% a year, it's really a pretty manageable growth factor. Breaking that down into these just quadrants, and you'll see, so it's 11%, I guess, overall, up by 453 students in those 5 years. Bottom left quadrant, where would we be for elementary? Once again, in that 11% range over 5 years, up about 256 students at that level. Little bit more of a substantial increase at the middle school. Middle school's at a fairly low number right now. That will actually change quickly for the middle school. They're going to have a bigger cohort coming into 7th grade next year, and we definitely have to plan for that during budget. And then a little bit of a smaller increase at the high school level as smaller graduating classes move in. So to look at it at the elementary, I'll give you just a moment. I don't think there's anything particularly remarkable on this slide. Most of the numbers, what you're looking at in the far left slide is current. What would it be next year? There's really very little change there. And this is not yet adjusted for any other kindergarten number. And then if you look at the 5-year, you can see with that, and it's not even across the schools, but at about 10, 11%, you start to get some bigger numbers. Obviously, our Latimer Lane construction project has been a significant focus from the board, and you're seeing a number there that could go up to 534. That's a big number for Latimer. We haven't seen that kind of number in more than a decade. And the squadron numbers starting to get back up to like Curtis era levels of when he was the principal. So, even Terrafil kind of peaking at that 300 number, which is interesting. So that's what I would, offer for commentary on that. The middle school, you can see, I would want you to look specifically at next year. You can see we're going to go from 634 this year to a projection of 678. And that, obviously, that 6th grade class going to 7th exists. So that's going to be a pretty accurate projection. And right now, you may recall from some of our other reports, we have one grade level at Henry James that has 3 full teams and one that has 2.6 teams. Mm-hmm. And we think both grade levels next year will need 3 teams. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to plan for that in the budget. Scott Baker already came through as one of the principals for our budget meetings and talked about that need. We do think there is an ability to borrow some of those teaching sections from the high school, that we have staff at the high school who could shift to teach a couple of classes at Henry James. So I'm not too worried about the budgetary impact, but we definitely have some planning to do to make that happen. And then again, 5 years out, the number starts to be over 700. And then the high school pretty stable during this phase, especially for the next 2 years, where the number actually goes down a little bit for the next couple of years. So I think we're in a good place with where we are for staffing at the high school level. So now I'll just pause there for a second, see if anybody had any questions about that, because that's sort of the NESDEC piece of where the straightforward 5-year projection. They actually give me 10-year projections. I don't believe they're worth showing publicly. Like to me, anything beyond 5 years is not really worth, the paper it's printed on. or the file.
Any questions?
Were we at 3 teams at Henry James a few years ago?
We were, maybe 6 years ago was the last time we were at 3 full teams in both grades.
Full. But there was one half team, right?
Yeah, there's been a .6.
There's point.
We actually done
4.6.
2.8 teams, and then we went to a 3 and a 2.6, and we've been there for like 3 years. And now it's really time to go back to 3 full teams at each grade. So this is one of my favorite charts. Those of you who know.
Can I just ask a
Yes,
question?
go ahead.
And I don't know if it's more appropriate for later, just let me know. So 450 over the next 5 years actually does seem like a lot to me.
Yeah.
And from just a physical plant angle, especially if it looks like the high school is going to be stable, that means there's going to be a big bump at the elementary and junior high. Do we have the physical space for it? Do we have classrooms for it?
We have certainly the build out at Latimer is going to help. But we also have cohorts. When you look at your 10-1 report, we don't have a lot of elementary classes pushing 22 in the primary grades or 25 in the upper grades. So there is some room to absorb students really at most cohorts in town. And so I would count on that, and I would count on Latimer being built at a capacity to take 4 of every grade level, 4 classes of every grade level. That's 28 all-purpose classrooms being built in that building.
Every time we approach the limits, we start to hear it from people in terms of.
On class size, you.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Even though we're within guidelines.
Absolutely, yep.
And does their projections take into account the latest proposal?
Does not take, it cannot yet factor in the Ridge South project. That is, I put it in my comments to them, but until that goes through zoning and stuff, they don't really.
So added stresses down on that end of town. Great,
No,
thank you.
the build out at Latimer, the 4 in each grade level. Does that, assuming that comes to fruition, would there be room for preschool rooms after that, or does the preschool need to be part of the 4 across each of those? How do we decipher that? Because that's the way to alleviate pressure from Squadron that we've talked about. Is to move some of that operation to Latimer.
In the immediate, there will definitely be room for some preschool rooms. And then we have to watch whether
I think that preschool
you're getting 4
operation is a
kindergartens
topic
in.
over time we need to really talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is where the whole process starts. It's one of my favorite charts. I've shown it to you before, but let me reorient you. The dotted line at the top is how many babies were born in Simsbury 5 years before kindergarten started. So that, you can see that, not the dotted line, the bottom line is how many babies were born in Simsbury. So the solid line is that, okay? And then you can see, so right around 200, and then last year was supposed to be the largest. The dotted line on the top represents how many kindergartners there were 5 years later. And what you're looking at is the distance of the gap between those 2 lines. This past year, when our kindergarten projection was way off, why was it way off? Because the gap has never been smaller. A high number of births on the solid line returned a low number of kindergartners on the dotted line. And what NESDEC has done is they'll take the averages and say, this is where you're going to go. So for this coming year, 24, there were 210 births 5 years ago in what would have been 2019. And they're saying, based on historical projections, that should result in 301 kindergartners, okay? So that's where you're getting those numbers. We know that their kindergarten projections were off last year, which makes me nervous. And we know that we have new legislation that has a change from September 1st to January 1st, and of us turning 5 before that date, with the possibility for an appeal process where parents could bring their children if they're bored. So I took this and I made some Simsbury adjustments to the project. So you can see here that I have changed that kindergarten number to 266. And that's roughly 12% less than NESDEC is predicting, and I'll tell you why I got there. So ultimately, that instead of 301, I'm projecting kindergarten for Simsbury at 266, and that the overall number, instead of NESDEC's number of 4163 in the bottom right-hand corner, that the K-12 number for Simsbury will be more like 4128. How did you get there, Neil? Well, let me show you. So as I said earlier, NESDEC was not comfortable doing anything with the kindergarten projections. It's only the state of Connecticut that is changing this legislation, and they're doing these projections for all 6 states, and they're doing them pretty much at this time of year for everybody. So they were not going to sort of slow down, and when I spoke with them, they found my methodology interesting. I offered to sell it to them. So what I did at this point is that working with Laura Shulman, I had shown you some of these charts with the October 1 enrollment. We tried to figure out a percentage historically of how many kids that are born in September, October, November, and December are typically enrolled in a kindergarten class. We affectionately call those our Burr babies of September, October, November, and December, and found out that if you take all of our grades and say how many of kids are born in those younger, that they are essentially 4 when they start kindergarten and turn 5 at some point in the fall, it's 15.6% of any grade in Simsbury. So, in theory, if this was a hard deadline, you would expect that 15.6% of the students that normally would have come would not be coming. Okay, so that's the first part of that. There is the potential for parents, based on the way the state wrote the legislation, to appeal to the principal in the school district to say, my child has whatever, a September 15th birthday, they just missed the cutoff. I'm very confident that they're kindergarten ready, and I'd like you to assess them and help make a recommendation about whether or not they can start kindergarten. Districts have to have a process. You are not allowed to say like, well, not in Simsbury, we're going to be September 1st. So you do have to be open to that. So I took the 15.6% and said, I do believe some parents will do that. I think most are going to say, oh, my child's born in October, November. That was going to be a hard decision. Not a hard decision anymore. I'm just going to go with what this, I'll wait till next year. But some will certainly want their children to go. So I then looked at the historical patterns. It is a little more common for people with September and October birthdays to say yes than people with November and December birthdays. And I settled at around 12% of what I thought was a multiplying factor. And so what I did was take each projection for kindergarten, reduce it by 12%, round the number, and say how many classes do I need. As a result of that, if I just took NESDEC's projections, we would have needed 2 more kindergarten teachers. With the methodology I'm using right now, I think we will need 2 fewer kindergarten teachers than NESDEC projected. But it will be close, and I'll be monitoring it all spring, and we're going to see whether this methodology works. So, and then I do want to make just the final comment that because this is all based on historical, once I feed the new kindergarten class to NESDEC next year, the projections really should correct themselves. Because now it's...
No question. Yeah.
So hopefully this is only a 1-year methodology, which is why they probably didn't want to buy it. But we'll see where that goes. So that's sort of my kindergarten calculation. And then just to conclude with these couple of notes that it is that sort of 10% over 5 years, if it averaged out, it's about 90 students per year for the next 5 years. And the K classes are going to be important to monitor, and that'll be right through May and June that I think we'll be watching that process.
But really, at next year, it looks pretty flat.
It looks flat
if
overall.
kindergarten plays out the
Correct,
way
correct.
you think,
If,
which is
If
interesting
every-
for budget.
so the state said, made it September 1st, but gave that caveat that you can go and petition your kid to go there.
Right.
Is that just for next year, or is it every year indefinitely that you can petition your?
I think that's something the legislation's
Yeah,
going to be
that's
talking
something,
about.
so,
A lot of
right,
buzz about it.
as it stands now, it's for this year, but what we're trying to hopefully engage with the legislature is an implementation over the years, because right now it's a hard stop, it's the September 1st, and you have to ask for, request a waiver from your individual district, but with so many issues with the pre-K and non-pre-K slots around the state for students, this is something that we want the legislature to understand, that it's the pre-K that is going to be the issue. So when they had passed this, they really weren't thinking about, geez, those kids that are left behind that are in the pre-K. So the goal is hopefully that there will be an implementation year after year, and of course, talking with superintendents and things, to be able to monitor that as we go forward, because that's going to be a big issue around the state with all the districts.
Do you know if all of New England, are they all a hard stop on September? I thought.
Yeah,
it was-
we are
I've
one of.
never heard of.
We're the last state.
We are a minority. There's
Yeah.
under a handful of states right now that allow January 1st as the
Yeah.
cutoff date. So
But but my question is those around us, has anybody ever done this,
Is September
you can
1st a
petition
hard
thing?
stop or not?
Or I always thought it was a hard stop, period, in most states, and so
It
I
is.
just didn't know if that was something, okay.
Just a quick, you'd mentioned the NASDAQ suggested we needed 2 more kindergartners, but by the patented Sullivan methodology, we're to be flat, right?
Correct.
Okay, perfect, just want to make sure.
Correct, flat overall for elementary.
Oh, great, okay.
Overall for elementary. So,
Great.
all right.
Thank you.
Glad I finally got the clicker working there.
Thank you. If you look on it, it goes 2 more slides, it starts again. So you weren't that far off.
Well, I think that transitions us nicely into the elementary curriculum and program update. So I'm going to invite to the table our Director of Elementary Curriculum, Betsy Gonzalez, math coach, Lori Martinson, first grade teacher at Central School, Kara Arbone, and fourth grade teacher at third. You switch. That's right. I keep on forgetting that. Third grade teacher at Tooten Hills, Christine Nesky. So this program update is actually going to come into 3 parts. The first part is to give you an update around our elementary math, and specifically a transition of materials that we are going to be utilizing in the next year. We've had a transition team, so let me just say, why are we instituting a change? When we were preparing our budget last year, Betsy actually reached out to Math and Focus, thank you, and they shared that our materials were no longer going to be printed. So we're like, fantastic, okay, we weren't anticipating that.
But if Betsy hadn't reached out, would you not have known?
Well, eventually, when we reordered our consumables, we would
But
have
it would
known.
have been a while.
Yeah,
It was
that
a very thorough budgeting process on my part.
that very thorough, Betsy. Appreciate that. Very good plug. And so we said, okay, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to look at the actual curriculum materials that we use. And what we found is that there was a very significant process that Betsy and her coaches went through to vet different materials, keeping the same teaching practices and pedagogy. So you're going to hear about that, but you're also going to see what this transition team has been doing this year, who's been a part of that inclusive transition team, and what does math look like in an elementary classroom. So I see a lot of visuals and different manipulatives, so it will be exciting. The second component of this program update is going to be an update on our waiver status with the science of reading legislation. So we'll hold on that for now. And then the third part is I just wanted to share with you our district performance index. What that means. You may have heard that they were recently released in November. What's that all about? What does it measure? What does it mean for us and our performance here in the elementary world? So those are going to be the three parts. I'm going to turn it over to Betsy and her team and take it away.
Thanks, Sue. So when Sue asked about coming tonight and sharing an update with you, I thought who better to have at the table with me than the teachers who are delivering this instruction in their classrooms every day, and a math coach who is working side by side with the teachers in the building. So thank you all for joining me tonight and sharing your practice with not only the board, the community, but some of the information that you'll see tonight will be shared with all of our teachers who are not part of the math transition team. Sure. As we bring them along in this process. So thank you very much. So since this is a math update, I thought it would only be appropriate to include some math data in part of this presentation. So Kara and Christine are 2 of 28 teachers in the district who are part of a transition team right now. We have 5 coaches working side by side with the teachers in their buildings, and you can see the names of our teachers in the schools that are participating. We have lots of special ed teachers, too many to count, that are working side by side with their teachers who are delivering the curriculum. So they're learning as they go as well and thinking about differentiation and the implications for accommodations and modifications of programming and instruction. And it encompasses about 30% of our elementary staff who are involved in this transition team, which is great because we're learning a lot. We're getting a lot of people up to speed, developing some expertise and capacity so that when we do go full scale next fall, it will be a much smoother rollout for all teachers. So we're really excited about that. So when the team said yes to being part of the math transition team, and just to note, there were many other teams who said, please, please, please choose us. But we just had to have a balance of grade levels and schools represented, and not so many that the coaches couldn't provide that support on a daily basis. So that was part of it. So as a member of the math transition team, they participate in regular meetings weekly, if not more than that, with their coaches. They're planning, they're asking for feedback, they're offering feedback, they're teaching the program with fidelity, they're teaching it as written and as prescribed, so that we can get a true sense of how it's going and work out any kinks. They engage in regular professional development. We've had the good fortune of having trainers from the program support us virtually right now. In the fall, we'll have a trainer come out to start the kickoff with all of our teachers. So in August, Sarah Schaefer, who's the program developer, will be in district and providing that support as we engage this work in all of our classrooms. And they're very open to sharing their practice, which is why the reason why they're here tonight. So we're really excited about that. So throughout the year, we've already engaged in a lot of professional development where these teams have come together across the district. And on October 15th, we had a professional development day. And we asked our transition teams, what do you have to say? How is it going? What do you like about it? What's working? And so these are their testimonials that I thought would be worth noting, so that you can start to feel the energy and the excitement that these transition teams are experiencing in their classrooms. So kids are definitely using some methods that they've never used in the past, and you're going to see and hear a little bit more about that. Kids are very much challenged, and that was actually a note of caution that the teachers had initially when we were reviewing these programs. They weren't really sure because there wasn't an actual enrichment book that came with the program, but there are lots of things that are woven in that the company assured us of, and we're certainly seeing that firsthand, and there's plenty of rigor and challenge in the program. The assessments are much better aligned to the content that the teachers are teaching. So one of the things that we shared with the board in the past is that the program that we're using right now often goes out of grade level, and it goes up, and it's pretty rigorous and challenging, and sometimes there are some skill gaps that kids have in their learning. And so we are seeing less of that in this program. So it's very much more aligned to the work of the grade, and the assessments really do measure what the teachers are teaching. So there's a nice correlation there. Our ESS students are actively participating. There are lots of different entry points for students to start the learning, and you'll see in some examples of that. So regardless of where students are in their skill development, whether they're a student who's still growing some skills or students who are ready for some challenge, there's entry points for all of those students. So it's certainly meeting everyone's needs. So we're excited about that. We certainly also ask the teachers what's not working so well and what are some of the bumps and the challenges that you're experiencing. And we have an internal system where the teams put that information into a document that we collect. Our coaches review that. We review that with the program developer. We have an opportunity to meet with her on a monthly basis, and she helps us think through some of those challenges and offer some solutions. So it's really been very supportive at all levels, from us at the level of implementation as well as the teachers who are actually doing this work and delivering the instruction to students. So we wanted to bring a lesson to you and show you what it looks like in both the third and first grade classroom, so you can see students at work and engaged in this process. And one of the things that you're going to notice is that Think Mathematics follows a structure, and it's the same structure that you'll see in a first grade classroom and the same structure you'll see in a fifth grade classroom. And so there are 6 parts to that structure. You're going to see in the video that the teachers are engaging students in a task, and we call that an anchor task, where the students are exploring a concept that they're going to be learning that day, and they're going to be working collaboratively and engaged in some discussion with their peers. After that, the students come back together for a structured discussion. That's where the teacher is going to point out some of that learning, guide the students into the learning for the day, and start to develop that background that the students need, the new information as they're acquiring that skill. Students are tasked with reading the textbook. There's a lot in the textbooks, which is why we brought them. It's an important part of the lesson, and you will see students sitting side by side or in groups, and they're actually reading the textbooks because there's a lot of visual examples and different ways to show the math that the students are learning. Students have a chance to try it out with their teacher for some feedback and to adjust their thinking as they've learned a skill. They journal regularly, so students are journaling 2 to 3 times a week, where they're explaining their thinking, drawing things out, using words to describe what they know, and it's a great assessment tool for teachers. And then finally, they engage in some independent practice where they're working on their own, solving some problems, so they can have more exposure to that skill, and the teachers can have a sense of where kids are and how they might need to adjust. So I am going to ask Katie to cue up the video so we can look at it. So first you're going to see Kara deliver her first grade lesson, and her teaching point for the day, I'll give it to you in case you're wondering, is I can identify number patterns. So that's what you'll see first graders doing. And in third grade, you're going to see Christine engage her students in a lesson where her learning target is I can use strategies to multiply by 9. So you can see the difference in skill based on the work of the grade.
How long's the math block, Betsy?
Your math block's about 50 minutes to an hour.
50?
Mhm.
I apologize if it's loud.
Okay.
That's not
I hate that.
Please hold.
All right, so
Why
we'll
don't you
move on
keep
to
on
the
going?
next part. Lori, do you want to talk about our engagement tool?
I happen to also be part of the vertical team for math, so that consists of people kindergarten through grade 12. So we have administrators and teachers across the district, and with the district's focus on engagement, Sue charged us last year with really questioning what does engagement look like in a math classroom. Not compliance, but engagement. So we did some research, we went into classrooms and really thinking about what engagement looks like versus what compliance looks like, or what non-engagement looks like.
Microphone.
Sorry.
We went back and forth across the grade levels and thinking, so what does that look like in elementary? What does it look like in a secondary school? And at the end of the day, came up with this tool. This is our engagement tool that you can see, where we're thinking about what the student is doing, what the teacher is doing, and what the task is. What I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled to share, is that any Think Math classroom that I could go into, I can see almost every box checked just about every day. And it's never meant that you're checking every box. It really depends upon what's going on in the classroom at that time. But you're going to see in that video the buzz of the students. It's not just, oh, we have to solve this, but really talking about different strategies and challenging each other, taking risks. They're really growing from a collaborative standpoint, and all of this really goes back to the vision of the graduate and all of those attributes that we want our learners to have. You're going to see, we see teachers that are not saying this is how you do it, but they're asking questions. And based upon the questions that they're asking, the children are actually doing the teaching, because you're strategic in what you are asking to move that along. And the tasks, well, when we have the Think Math tasks, one great thing about it is that in every single lesson, there is an anchor task there that has a high floor and a low ceiling. You're also using manipulatives, so there's an entry point for all.
Great. And while
So one question that I have, and I'm glad you brought up engagement, because I was going to ask that. But, you know, and I know we're going to see, but one of the questions that I have is, have you been able to notice the difference from what we were using before to now, understanding, you know, seeing the kids being more engaged, you know, I mean, and I'm also thinking that the way that we're delivering is a little different. So I'm just
want to
asking.
address that?
Yeah, sure. So I've taught third and fourth most of my career for 17 years, and I will say that this year my students know their math facts more than they ever have. And when we were first looking at Think Math, in the past it was do multiplication first, then move on and do division. And Think Math does one day multiplication, the next day is division. Multiplication, division. I was like, oh, I don't know about this. But it makes the kids not be number pluckers. That's right. They have to really understand the task now and make them think, where before our word multiplication, I'm gonna just multiply. So I've seen a huge difference, and them understanding multiplication, and you'll see in the video, they can explain it, they can show it, visuals, using words. So I think I definitely see that.
Yeah. One other thing, can you all like send the book around so we can see it as well?
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Just about engagement as well, especially in the first grade classroom, since there are so many elements, it moves quickly, which keeps kids engaged. The kids know the structure, they know the routine, so that helps them to know what's coming next, to anticipate, and then each part is very engaging for them. They enjoy the math that they're doing, and then it moves on to the next thing quickly, so nobody gets sort of bored or stuck.
That's good.
So the points you're raising, are these differentiation points from what we're currently using, Math and Focus, or are these just elements of the program? And if they're just elements of the program, what are you finding are the main differences between what we're doing now and this new system?
So one main difference, so the pedagogy that we're using, the Singapore Math, always starts with an anchor task, and that's not something that was given in Math and Focus. Teachers had to come up with that, looking at the learning target and sort of figure out what would be a good task for us to do that would help kids get where they need to get. But in Think Math, it's right there for you every single day. The first grade book, I don't know about the third grade one, but it has the anchor task in the student book, and then it has interactive manipulatives on the smartboard that the kids can use to solve the anchor task during our debrief. I can use them to talk about what the kids have done. So that's one element that's really helpful there. And then I'll talk more about journaling, but journaling is something that was mentioned in Math and Focus, but wasn't really highlighted. Journaling is a huge part of Think Math, and it's a really great way to see what kids are thinking and have them explain their thinking. And it even the littlest ones, which I was again, I was nervous. I was like, first graders can't journal, but they can. And so it's really cool to see what they're able to do in that journal. So that's an element that I think this program does really well.
That's really interesting about the anchor task. I remember going back when we implemented the Math in Focus, where it wasn't defined. You could go classroom to classroom, and in one place that anchor task was taking up most of the lesson, and in another place the teacher had planned it really concise. So that's interesting to hear that it's
Yeah.
a little more standardized, for lack of a better
It's
word,
just
right? And
consistent,
you can go with
consistent.
it and you can build
Yes.
around it rather than spending all that burn trying to
When
figure
I
it
first saw
out.
this Think Math program, I said, "Oh my gosh, it comes with an anchor task every day."
That was
Because
really a
that
challenge, I
takes up
remember
teachers'
yours.
time of having to be able to create our own anchor task for every lesson, and that's just something that it's time consuming.
And like we mentioned before, like the anchor task that children are given, like it has a very low ceiling. Low ceiling. So like it's easy for all kids to access. So even my kiddos who are really struggling with math, they're able to access the anchor task. Whether it's they're drawing pictures, whether it's they're using manipulatives. But those kids who really are ready for a challenge, they're able to explore it in completely different ways. So it's something that's really accessible to everyone, which is really nice to see.
And not only does Think Math give you the anchor task, but it gives you something called a board plan. And that gives teachers, like when they're doing the anchor task and we're circling around, we're asking questions, it tells you what to look for. Here are some strategies students should be doing. So I know what I have, like I write down like a quick, okay, number one, I'm looking for this strategy. Number two, I'm looking for this. So when I go around, I can highlight strategies for students to go and discuss afterwards. So it's just there's clarity to it, which is much.
So we're going to modify and adjust because that's what teachers do all the time as we're hoping the technology is resolved. But why don't you talk a little bit about, you brought an anchor task, so you can
I
we'll
was
share
going
it
to
this
say,
way.
we could see
we
an
can
anchor
adjust.
task, that would be good.
So this is well loved. It's in the budget, but it's well loved. So we do something called, but you have the book, the Think
Math?
Yes, or the Building Thinking Classrooms, and that's something that we're implementing in the classrooms this year. And what it is for the anchor task. Last year for anchor task, students were sitting at their tables, got their math journal, they're working with the same students every day. And I remember end of last year, I'm like, I gotta beef this up. This is just, they're bored of it. So now their strategy in there was doing random groupings. So every day before math, I present the anchor task, we go over it, and then I have playing cards. I have 9s, 10s, jacks, queens, kings, and aces. And it's random. I quickly give it out. They go to their groups, they know exactly where 9s go, 10s go, so every day they're working with new students. And I make sure that they see it is random, so there's no arguing. And they have to learn how to collaborate, work together. And I will say by doing this strategy, they are relying on each other and not me. I can say we're in December or whatever, they've not come up to me like, I don't get this, I'm confused. They rely on each other for that, which is great. And so they have this, it's supposed to be a vertical whiteboard, but you'll see in my classroom, I didn't have room on my wall for it, so we just kind of keep that at the tables. And in this strategy, they get one marker. So there's 3 students around the whiteboard. And one student can be recording while other students are sharing strategies, and those students will record their strategies, or they can pass the marker around, and students will go ahead and put their strategies on. And during this time, I'm walking around, I'm asking questions to get that deeper level of thinking. Can you explain why you put that there, or can you draw that a different way? Yeah. And then I will ask students, as this is about 10 minutes of the lesson, I will say, can you share this strategy? Can you share this strategy? So they have to kind of like prep themselves. Okay, I'm going to share this. Okay, I gotta remember what to say. And then after that, we come back for that structured discussion where they come to the carpet every day with a whiteboard, a marker, and a textbook. And it's the same structure every single day. So they come to the carpet, and then I ask the students those strategies that I asked them to share, they're going to share their strategies. I'm going to write that on an anchor chart. So I'm going to build an anchor chart off of those strategies. And when a student is sharing, I'll call another student. Can you explain why they put the 9 there? Can you explain why they put 5 circles up there? So they're having to explain other student strategies, which is such a higher level of thinking. And then when I put the student strategies up, I give them ownership, so I put their name up next to their strategy. Or I'll put the initials of the students in the group up there to have that ownership. And then we go ahead and we read the textbook. So we read the textbook, we say, let's see what strategies our math friends came up with, because the anchor task is in the math book with other strategies. And then we'll compare and we'll contrast and we'll say, oh, they came up with this, we come up with that, and we'll make some connections. So here's just an example. It was, my book's going around, I don't know what the book was. Oh, it was where that blue Post-it is.
This one?
Sharon, yeah.
Okay.
It was, there's 24, how many groups could there be, how many in each group?
Oh, yeah.
So this group has, they made their groups, 24, 3 in each group, there could be 8 bags. Or you can have 4 in each group, and there can be 6 bags, so on and so forth. So then we'll look into textbooks and we'll compare, what did they have? Do they have what we have? And in this strategy, in this example, we had 24, we can put 1 bag of 24, they didn't have that. So we talked about, oh, we're smarter than the. And then in the textbooks, there's visuals, there's vocabulary, there's scaffolding for students. So not only are they doing the math, they're reading about the math, which I think is very important. So don't mind the.
No, thank you.
No, we know what you're saying.
Oh, here's the
We hear you.
video.
Next week's budget.
So now we'll put it.
We'll take it on
Now that's quite,
advisement.
that's quite a tee up for the video.
We found a better version.
Advisement.
So one other question that's coming up, there's a 1A and a 3A. What's the,
First grade.
First grade and third
that's
grade.
the first grade and third grade? Okay. I thought so, but I wanted to ask.
Grade has an A and a B.
Oh, okay, okay.
Is the goal to get through A and B in the
Within a
year?
year.
Yes.
And this is just K-5, it doesn't go to 6?
It does not go to 6,
Okay.
not at this time.
So 6 still would remain math and focus?
Yes, yes. And we had a 6th grade teacher on our committee when we were looking at programs and when we had to make a decision. And just to make sure that whichever program we chose, there would be a seamless transition from grades 5 to 6, skill-wise and content-wise, and pedagogy. And that's, so they will stay with math and focus because that's used 6, 7, and 8.
I see.
That's its own sequence.
So when you do that, are you counting up? Are you counting back? How are you counting?
So this is like, so it's funny, counting back 13, 18, 17. It's a counting back pattern. How would we make 11? How would we make 6? Oh yeah, right. No, look at what last thing? You add 5 plus 4 equals 9. So it's like the same thing as 8 times 9 because the 5 and the 4 equals 9. So 40 plus 32 would equal the same thing as 8 times 9.
It was, our anchor task was 8 times 9.
This is right.
I need to reteach.
You see my face? I'm like. Did you get that one?
All the numbers I could have picked multiplied by. Nora, was it easy for you guys?
Yeah.
Great. So what did you have to do now?
So then we minus 8 from the 80
that right there. Why did you minus 8? Eva, can you share what that picture that you drew, Cam? 10 in each group. Of 8 groups. Why did Eva take away 1 from each group? Turn and talk. Go, go, go. There is the 8. And that equals what, everybody? 72. What did Mateo do? Nora? He did 8 times 10. Yep. And what did he get? 80. And then that little bubble down there, then what he has to do? So what do you have to do with that 80? Subtract what? 8. Is that what we did? Yeah. Sure did. 8 times 9. What'd you get, Jakai? Great strategy.
Okay, good stuff. All right, I'm at least as smart as what was that, 3rd grade?
Are you smarter than a 4th grader?
I don't know yet now.
Should we
Kara,
drop
you
it
have
down?
some thoughts that you just wanted to share about journaling.
Sure. Absolutely. So, like I said, journaling was something that was not explicitly part of the math and focus structure, but something that was new to Think Math. And I know, especially as a 1st grade teacher, I was very nervous about journaling. But as you could see in that video, even the littlest ones are able to express their thinking in a journal, whether it's through words, numbers, pictures. So something that's great about the Think Math program is that they give us a journal prompt every day. So we get an anchor task every day and a journal prompt. We also had some wonderful professional development around journaling, where we learned about what are different types of journal prompts, and if we wanted to challenge students with different types of journal prompts, how would we create those journal prompts based on the learning target? So that was something that moving forward in the program, as we get more comfortable, that's something that I definitely look to explore. And then the journal is also a great way to show parents what their students are learning about, something that we could show at report card conferences. This is how your child is thinking about math. It really takes the learning that they've done and consolidates it into their own thinking. So it's really a great part of the program.
So a lot of these are structures that our teachers practice every single day. Many of the practices actually that are in our program come from this book. So at our professional development last week, we just introduced some of those strategies to all teachers because you don't have to do math just to practice them. So we had teachers getting into different groups last week as part of our PD, and we used different card systems, and then we taught into the strategy and why it's helpful and how it lives in our math program. So that will be coming to all teachers throughout the course of this year, just to ease people into it if they're not part of the transition team, and then we'll get more into the content in the spring and early summer.
So just a little bit about this. I know I stepped out, and Laura, you shared the engagement tool that we've been working on in our K-6 vertical team. We're also, as a K-6 team, reading this text and looking at these practices from kindergarten all the way up through high school. And so building our understanding about what this looks like developmentally for elementary, for middle school, and high school. So definitely more to come on there.
I have a question about homework and what it looks like in this project, or in this new textbooks series. Are they going to get their textbooks to go home with them to help them refer back to for homework purposes, or do those stay in school?
It depends upon the grade level. Your intermediate grades, your 4 or 5, can take textbooks home, especially more as a reference tool, but your younger ones wouldn't take it home. From a homework standpoint, we're really looking to build number sense. So you may see problems similar to what they're doing in class, but you also may see number sense type questions. You could even see a journal type question going home for homework.
There are great, it was actually one of the testimonials, really good parent communication tools in this program that the teachers sent home to help parents understand what students are learning, give them some strategies and ideas for how they can support their children at home. So there's a really nice communication piece that comes with this as well.
Jen?
I noticed on the testimonies and stuff, it was like people seem, and you guys seem to really love that there's the anchor of the day, or whatever it's called. The
Anchor task.
Anchor task. The anchor task. My question is, I love the sound of kids teaching other kids, like that whole thing on the. I know my kids would have loved something like that, right? It sounds great. But for the kids who are excelling in math, I could see third grade and younger, definitely those kids standing up and, wanting to take the lead and explaining how they do that. And that's amazing. And I love that. But how are we able to then expand for those kids that maybe, like you said, the anchor task is sort of easier so everyone can do it. So how about those kids that are, coming to math third grade, maybe know their multiplication tables already, or how do you address that in a group? I suppose that would be an issue.
How do you
anywhere.
differentiate the teaching?
Can you, or you can't, because this is the anchor task and that's it.
My experience has been that the content really doesn't matter. Whether you're talking about first grade or fifth grade, the anchor tasks are very developmentally appropriate for that specific content. And all of them offer a high floor and a low ceiling. And by that I mean a low entry point for those that may be striving, that greatly benefit from the use of manipulatives to make sense of something, versus a high ceiling. There's multiple ways. We really try to emphasize having a clever day, meaning that we can find at least 3 different strategies to solve something, and not just the strategies, but making connections among those strategies. How does your pictorial representation really connect with the algorithm? There are lots of kids that can do an algorithm but don't necessarily make sense of what we're doing. It's a how before it, why do you multiply numerators with numerators?
Sorry, I have a follow-up question to that. The program sounds great. I love the textbooks. The engagement seems incredible. And I have 2 still in elementary, 1 in 5th and 1 in 2nd, so I get this. What are you seeing as some of the limitations of the program, and are there strategies you guys can implement, whether from Math and Focus or somewhere else, to remedy those?
Do you guys want to answer that?
Limitations. I mean, I think we have such a great support system that if I have a question or a problem, we have Lori, or or if Lori's a no, she reaches out to the math or the Think Math coaches. The assessments, there were a little bit longer assessments that took longer than we wanted it to be. So maybe the assessments might be
From
longer than we expected.
From an assessment lens, we did find that they have been longer, and then you learn as you live, and the trainer explained, well, you don't have to ask all of those questions, and so as a district, the math coaches have been collaborating together to make sure that each assessment has all of the learning targets covered on it, but you don't have to cover the same learning target 3 times on the assessment.
Right. That makes sense. And so our objective, right, is to have better math learners, or understanding numbers and stuff when they're younger.
Correct.
That ultimately, down the line, when they start their star math, I'm assuming we're tracking that. So our star math and things like that, we will see some improvements in years to come.
That's correct.
That will show in those type of tests, or
100%. And the other component of that is making sure that we're having these vertical discussions with our math leaders, with our teachers at the elementary, middle, and high school, so they know what's coming. They know what it looks like. It transitions to appropriate high-level practice that can also be differentiated through their entire math experience here in Simsbury. So those vertical discussions are crucial.
I really like, Betsy, talked about like a tool to track some of the challenges as we go, and just, to sit in the teacher realm for a little bit. And one of the challenges of an elementary teacher with multiple prep, multiple things going on, we hear about high stress. And I know we're being cognizant of this program, what we track and how we roll out the support in PD. for teachers, and this is where it gets tricky at the state level, right? We
That's
have
right.
our own plan here that we feel very comfortable with, and then the legislation, right hook, comes about reading waivers and changes you need to make in a long-standing reading program. So we just, with our leaders, which is, I'm pleased this is so well organized, we really need to think through how we support our staff so they can be successful, right? And it's great to see early success here, and when we take that to scale, I know that'll be a big part of our, as you mentioned, PD for the end of this year and next
All of this
year.
reaches the kids.
I have two questions
feel
for you,
that,
and you mentioned it before, but just quickly, like, what happens with sixth grade? Right, I mean, I know they're still in math and focus, but if they're not printing materials, like, just how, like, logistically, how do we handle
So
that?
sixth grade doesn't have a student textbook.
Okay.
So
So it makes it easy.
they never did. So
Okay.
the 6-8 sequence doesn't change.
Okay, perfect,
Yep.
great. And then just, I wanted to thank you for the presentation, it was great, as you can see, we got great engagement. This board, as you all know, has spent a lot of time on math in general, so I think actually Math in Focus may have gave us an opportunity here. I just wanted a basic question, like, do you have everything you need? Anything we can do to help further support you? Just want to make sure you.
Maybe some new vertical wipe.
They're in the budget for this year.
Someone go to Staples tomorrow?
No, that's the new one. Those are the new ones. They're a little sturdier.
This was the best one I can find in my closet.
We live and learn.
You're
well loved.
Yes.
Try board meetings next week.
a
It's
lot
on
of
the.
use.
I got it written down. Amy, you just
Try
need to
your,
make.
try your PTO first if you need that
Thank you.
immediate.
Thank you.
Evidence of clever days.
Yes.
Clever days.
Evidence of clever days.
Evidence
Go
of
into it.
fidelity of the implementation. Take our tests every day.
Thank you.
Thank you
Great,
very
thank
much
you.
for
And
coming.
thank you for your flexibility as we improvise. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
So Matt just shared that we're very cognizant because here's the math component, right? And now what we're going to transition to is the science of reading. So just as a reminder and to give the board a little bit of context, last year legislation was passed specific around the science of reading, and this is legislation that impacts kindergarten through third grade. And what this legislation did was a couple of things. It said first that at the state, a center of literacy was going to be created, and a very specific team of educators and consultants to look at various curricula and programs that were aligned with the science of reading. So the science of reading is very explicit, build upon foundational skills and knowledge in reading. It includes phonemic awareness, to phonics, to fluency, right? So we learn these letter sound recognitions. We put those together in blends. We use those to form words, to be able to decode words, to get better and be more fluent in our reading. It also, it has a component of vocabulary instruction as well as reading comprehension, right? And again, in a very systemic, explicit way. So the legislation also said, okay, this group is going to note minimally 5 programs that kind of check the boxes and that are approved by the state to be aligned with the science of reading. They did that. When we first came out with the 5 programs, quite honestly, we felt a little deflated because we didn't think that they were robust. They were, quite honestly, a little bit boring and not aligned with what we want to do for kids and what we know kids can do. So there was a process that also allowed districts to apply for a waiver to say, hey, you can make your case to the state and they can determine whether or not what we're currently doing will meet the expectations of the science of reading. So as Tara mentioned, an enormous amount of districts applied for that waiver. That waiver was due to the state this past February, and just 10 days ago, we heard the results of that waiver. So we have been granted a transition waiver. This is a good thing. What we wanted to do was not have to, quite honestly, be forced to take one of those 5 initial programs, then they expanded it to 7. But we wanted to say, hey, we know here is what we do for these 5 pillars of reading, for phonemic awareness, for phonics, for reading comprehension. Here's where we'd like to go. here's where we know we need to get better and improve. So those results came back. So Betsy's going to review those and share kind of where we're headed with the science of reading and specifically our instruction K-3.
Great. So on October 30th, we had an opportunity to talk with, it was a one-on-one, and districts had the opportunity, if they so choose, to meet with a member of the State Literacy Council, along with the consulting group that the state contracted to read all of these waivers, to give an update as to where we were in the process and where we're heading next. So I thought this was a good visual to share with you what it is that we've done, because we've done a lot of learning since we submitted that waiver almost a year ago, February, and where we are today. So everything you see that's highlighted in yellow is the work that's in place in our K2, K3 classrooms. So we have a word study block where all of our teachers are teaching phonics and phonemic awareness, whole class to their students, and that goes through grade 3. So teachers have a half-hour block in which they deliver that instruction each day. We've taught into how you map high-frequency words. They used to be called sight words. These all fall under what is called a word study block. And one of the things that we did was we actually studied the 5 approved programs to see what did they all have in common? What did they all include? Because we know that we had a more robust way of teaching phonics and phonemic awareness to our students, and that's been in place. We spent a lot of time, a lot of training, a lot of money, and we just recently put those programs in place a few years ago, and they're working really well, and our students are responding. And so we really wanted to see that through. So as Sue said, that's a celebration, and it's great that we can hold on to those practices that we know work well for students. We've also focused a lot on what you see as the differentiation block. That too is in place where teachers are using decodable text. So last spring I sat here with Jill Vanini, who's a language arts DeVita, who's a language arts consultant at Squadron Line, and we shared with you some different types of decodable text that students are reading as they're practicing those phonics patterns. We have a screener that we use, that teachers use, to determine what it is that kids need and which books would be most helpful so that they can engage students in lessons that will help students learn those patterns, read them in those books, and then apply it in authentic text. So that part's great. All of our K2 teachers have a literacy skills block in their schedule where they're focusing on fluency practices, where they're doing different things with shared reading, interactive writing, and that's another opportunity to put it all together and to practice as a whole group. So if you look at a teacher's instructional minutes in their day, you will see this in all of the classrooms. We also have assessments that we use that are universal screeners. That's the DIBELS 8. It's a phonics screening assessment that gives us a sense of, are students making progress, or who is at risk? Do we have to intervene differently in the classroom through an intervention, adjust instruction? And we look at that data throughout the course of the year. So that part's in place. The one area that, while we certainly teach vocabulary and comprehension in our current curriculum, this is where the transition waiver, this is what it means for us. We have to really look at the lessons that we have in our classrooms in K through 3 and really ensure that we might need to supplement, whether it's finding a different resource or enhancing what we already have with lessons that are a little bit more explicit and a little bit more systematic. So that is the work that we will engage in terms of studying the programs that the state has approved through this compendium, is what they're calling it, to determine what's going to be the better fit for us and meet the needs of our students best. We will engage teachers in that work, really looking at that. But what is nice about it is it's a module. And that's the flexibility we have with this waiver, is we can implement just a piece, which is the piece that will help round out our comprehensive curriculum here in Simsbury. So that is our work to date. So this is just a graphic to show you our programs that we have in place. So anything that you see in green is what we are currently doing. And then what you see in yellow are the next steps that I just spoke about, which is addressing the vocabulary and comprehension for an implementation in fall of 2025.
Hey, Bets, I just wanted to jump in and just share something on process. And I guess do it through the lens of a superintendent, right? So I just want to be clear that the way the state, the legislature, and then the state Board of Education and kind of Commissioner's Office went through, this is very different. This is a first time we have seen this. This is a mandate. All right, this is a shift in how the state is directing districts, and a pretty significant shift. You know, normally you have standards, you have the ability to align your instruction with those standards to write your curriculum, right? This is whether you are, and I'll pick some of the districts, you know, Westport or New Canaan, and 98% of your students meet the mark on a state assessment with the current program, you can't do what you're doing anymore. So this is a major shift. What the waiver process did, and we touched on a little bit, and how I think the state did a nice job working with districts after this was laid out, is the feedback they got back about, hey, it's these 5 programs or nothing. The meetings that we had were a result of kind of good pushback and good dialogue. Let us at least have a conversation with you about what our plan is and where we plan to go, and will that change your thinking at all? So what it actually did is it expanded that list of 5 to, I don't know how many other options, like 5 more or 6 more.
We
something
approved
like
2
that.
more comprehensive and then
Yeah.
2 compendiums.
Right, so a little more ideas from things they heard from districts gave us, as Betsy and Sue said, a little more flexibility. So where this started out was really a tough spot for people to swallow in terms of kind of localized control and how we've done things. And I think we're landing in a little bit more of a acceptable middle ground of, hey, allow us to talk to you a little bit. And we've seen some transitional waivers. There's still a lot of dialogue statewide with this because many districts and many very high-performing districts were completely denied. Not any level of your components are accepted. A lot of those are very high-performing districts. So there's just a bit of a struggle about, hey, what are we really trying to attain here? We understand the science of reading. We'd like to make those adjustments ourselves. And if you didn't get it the first time, you kind of lose the ability to do that. It's a little wonky. You know what I mean? Like,
Even if their kids are performing.
If I'm a district and I put forward a program and my waiver was approved, now I'm a district that my waiver was not approved, but I might be interested in learning what that district is doing. Well, you don't have the flexibility to do that. You need to go back and do one of these 7 or 8 things. So it's just a very different process and a different way to do things. So I think we're fortunate we landed in a reasonable spot that the shifts we've made with the team over the last several years we can keep in place, and we do still have some work to do, which there'll be a lot more conversation on. But there's a lot of buzz, as Lydia mentioned, statewide about this from a process standpoint, and it's almost like, okay, is math next? What's coming next in terms of statewide mandates? I don't mean to scare you in the back row back there. But you know what I mean? It's just a different way that it came forward in terms of the legislative proposal, the process, and then the mandate.
Yeah.
So it's, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, transitional mandate obviously means it's not going to be out there forever. Just what's the timing on this?
So the implementation that the state has said is fall of 2025.
Okay.
So it gives us next year time to review, to think,
Separation
to plan, and implement.
I'm sorry. Cut you.
No, I have 2 questions. Following up on yours, so that means by 2025, we implement this module, then they have to approve it, and then we're good? Or is the plan you have that period of time to shift into one of these 7 approved resources?
No, we have until 2025 for us, it will be to look at the module we have to update around vocabulary and comprehension. I don't believe the state has to approve it again.
That's correct.
We've already received the feedback.
So when they approve this compendium, of which we are already going that way, they're saying, okay, we're now going to say that that's an approved set of curricula materials. You got it. By the fall of 2025.
Make some selections and
Yeah,
implement.
that makes sense. And then the second question I have is, Do you have a sense? I mean, it sounds incredibly irrational, right? You have a high-performing district, 98% are meeting state standards, but you can't continue to use that. We're denying your waiver. Do you have a sense for where this irrational conduct and behavior is coming from? What is driving that?
I think, I mean, it's really grounded in the science of reading.
It is.
Right? Those components. It was, I mean, it's legislature. I don't know where it was initiated. It was
The Black and Latino
Black and
Caucus.
Latino Caucus. Okay.
And the intent was because students that were Black and brown students weren't performing in reading at the same levels of their white counterparts. Really good intent around the legislation. Process went awry. So, but good intent around the initial legislation that was put forth.
But I do want to be clear, and I said about a level of flexibility once they got feedback for districts to
That's
respond.
correct.
So that's an important piece of what came out of it. But just started in a very different way in terms of, these are the 5.
Right.
Like, okay, how'd you get those 5? I mean, they had a process, but they weren't widely used across the state of Connecticut from what our understanding was.
That's correct. And it certainly
And I have
validates
to
what
say,
we're doing.
I would personally say that, not having been involved, but it's like if I think about in my workplace, it would be, something is stated, and I'm just giving you an opportunity to show me how you're solving this. And if you can show me, then I'm thinking you get a waiver. But and it's up to districts, right, to come back and say how they're doing it. And look, gratefully that we were able to do that. And there are districts out there that have not been able to. But that also is showing the work that they need to do.
And I think, to that point, I think some districts looked at this, upset about the process, maybe not move beyond that in terms of developing work, and submitted what they're doing. When you kind of knew that may not work, right?
Yeah.
Some districts didn't even apply for the waivers. So they totally did not even go to
And that doesn't put them in a horrible position either at this point, because you have a year to look at what other people are doing. But we felt good about where we were and the work we've done, and I sat in on that meeting. I mean, you would have been extremely proud of Betsy and our literacy experts and the time and effort that they put in. So I think we're on a pretty reasonable
Well, the other
path.
piece, though, that we have to always remember is that every mandate that they give us costs us a lot of money. And so with the waiver, it's a much more economical way for us to handle it because we're already doing it instead of retraining and
Right, several
realigning everything.
components already in place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So-
didn't mean to take that off the list.
No.
I just think the process and understanding that it was different is important.
So from March, when Betsy and Jill brought you the physically big binder of the waiver,
It was a beautiful thing.
it is a beautiful thing. And again, want to thank Betsy and the language arts consultants and our teachers for weighing in and seeing it through. And here's the result. So thanks.
It's a lot of
Bets.
work. Thank you.
All right, last component.
Betsy's not busy at all these
Really
days.
quickly. No, not at all.
Thank you, Bets.
Few initiatives.
I just wanted to share a little bit around the district performance index and what is this all about. You may have seen press releases on this next gen accountability system. So we had the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and in 2015, really quickly, it was reauthorized to Every Student Succeeds Act. And it called upon states to demonstrate performance of their students, but also growth. So Connecticut uses their next gen accountability system to demonstrate that we are succeeding in performance, in growth, and in some other measures. So there are 12 sets of indicators that districts are assessed upon. And the intent, again, is to give a more holistic view of how performance is going. Performance in student achievement, again, performance in growth. So there's some standardized test performance, there's growth within those measures. There are things like chronic absenteeism. How does that look in your district? How do students perform physically? So not only their minds, but their bodies. There are also measures to determine whether gaps exist between students that are identified as high needs versus non-high needs. And finally, you're also kind of looked at your participation rates in your standardized tests and are there gaps there? So just really quickly, again, if you've heard anything about this, I wanted to share our elementary results. So we have 3 schools of distinction which is exciting out of our 5 elementaries. And it's based upon their growth measure. So you make that kind of leaderboard as a school of distinction if in these certain indicators you're in the top 10%. And so Terrafil, Squadron, and Tooten all were noted as schools of distinction for student growth. So we're really excited about that. The other component is that we are excited that in all 5 elementary schools, there are no gaps between performance of statistically, how they measure it, statistically significant between your high needs and non-high needs, or in your participation rates. What we do have to look at, we have to look at some chronic absenteeism. And we also have to look at our physical fitness measures. So we're already in discussions. You know that we have a new K-12 PE and wellness director. That's Amanda Roy. And she's already scouring that data with her teachers as well as her students, because she teaches Wellness 10 and she's doing some data exercises about what these indicators are, and quite honestly, some tweaks that you can make, that we can make in our practice. So you'll hear the good old pacer test versus the mile run. Yeah, I hear the audibles over here, versus push-ups and sit-ups, right? And how do we measure those? And how do we give students practice over time and not make it this one big event? Like, that's all a part of this district performance index. So again, just a very couple of bullets and snippets so you're aware, but some nice results to share at the elementary
So
level.
I wanted to add one other thing, and, you know, we look at achievement data in a lot of different ways and share different information with you throughout the year. So this is a really nice result for these 3 schools in terms of student growth over time. I do want to say that if you look at these measures in a different way, in terms of the percentage of students that meet the overall achievement goal by the state of Connecticut, the 2 highest performing schools in the district are the 2 that aren't listed here. Okay, they're Latimer and they're
I was gonna
Central
say, that's
School.
probably why
So
they're not listed.
it is, you know, all these data points are important, but it's important to take them for what they are and what we're measuring, because there's different ways to look at it. And both those markers are important, right?
Yeah.
The growth of our students is important, and we want to get everybody to that standard as well. So just interesting changes that the state has made in how they kind of report out on schools.
Yes.
Can I ask one question about absenteeism? Was 2020 kind of a high hit on that, and has it improved, or do you think that's at all part of
We're
it?
seeing some variable patterns. You know, we are concerned about our students who are classified as high needs students that have free and reduced lunch, special education needs, right? They're hitting thresholds in a different way. And so, quite honestly, we have our social workers in their professional learning communities looking at strategies that are working, kind of getting to the individual reasons, but also looking at thematically how we can change some of those outcomes. So that's where we're at. It's some years we have really great, and then some years it falls off. And so we have to really look more into it. But it's something important to us.
It's defined as missing 10% of the days.
Oh, okay.
So if you miss
Thank you.
18 days of school,
You're chronically absent.
and I can tell you from the high school data back when I was principal, when we looked at this, the patterns are such that if you're a high school student who's been chronically absent, you
You're
probably
an
have a
elementary school
history of
student.
chronic absenteeism as you came through.
Yeah.
So it's getting to early
Early intervention.
intervention
Yeah.
with families to make sure kids aren't missing school.
How many days is it before that letter comes, gets sent? It was like 8,
Oh, you like those letters, don't
Oh,
you?
one of my kids maybe hit that once, so I
Yeah.
remember that. Like,
there's 6
6?
and
Okay.
9.
Oh, okay.
Right, so you might just get a, hey, just as a reminder, a friendly reminder, school attendance is important. Your child has been absent 6 times already. There's been some changes there as well, but 6 and 9, you get the letters.
So it's interesting because this whole chronic absenteeism thing is a national kind of discussion that's going on right now.
Yes.
And I've been paying attention, and I'm just wondering, because everybody knows I don't have children in the school, but one of the things that is coming up, and I knew about the 18 days, is when a lot is happening around students being on vacations with parents. We may have Thanksgiving, but they may be going on vacation 2 weeks prior. And then, and that factors into all of this. And so what is happening in some districts, not maybe in Connecticut, is those are being considered unexcused absences because those are factoring into those 18 days. And so some of what I've been wanting to ask, and I'm glad it came up, is, separating the school lunch and whatnot. Are we looking at the whole body? And I'm thinking that we are.
We are.
But I'm thinking that the challenges are a little different.
Yeah, so families have kind of, for the sake of a better term, some freebies before you start getting these letters reminding you, right? Like, okay, there's only a certain number of kind of unexcused absences before it can start really impacting the kind of overall profile of your students, your child's educational experience. So, certainly I can provide you a more detailed of how we measure it, what we look at over time, and some strategies that we're implementing to increase the rates of attendance here.
And are we looking at the unexcused, globally the same way?
And Sharon, I would say as a parent, you do get, it'll tell you on your things, it'll tell you whether it's an excused, parent excused, or if it's a doctor excused, so where those are coming. So they certainly can pull them that way.
All the data is definitely available.
It is.
And the doctor ones I'm thinking are, probably I'm thinking more of the other ones, because I watch it on Facebook and I'm saying, where are all the kids? Why are they out of school?
But I will say, to defend all the parents, because I've definitely pulled my kids for vacation, but I will also say that the way those rules work around the absentees is a little sketchy, because if you have a kid who has, let's say, I don't know, just has a cold and has a fever, you're not going to always take them to the doctor just because your kid has a fever. You can't. No one can afford to take them every time they have a fever, and so then it becomes a parent excuse when really they are sick. And so, but it's still logged as a parent excused, and so.
Fever's a fever.
Fever's a fever.
Be a whole other update for you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Betsy.
Thank you. Keep smiling.
Betsy's tired. She wants to go home.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
right.
A lot going on.
You know what? Public
Great job,
audience is
Betsy.
next. So I mean,
Thanks
if
again
you
for
want-
coming out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very
Thank you.
interesting.
Excellent.
Looks like you have fun classes.
I know. I want those whiteboards.
Newer ones.
Yeah, those are right.
Those are
But
good
either
stuff.
way,
I
that
was
sounds so
thinking
fun.
we should give these kids our kindergarten projections and see what they come up with.
Yeah,
That's
right.
right. Oh, they might
There's
have
your
a
anchor task right there.
They might challenge you, Neil.
All right. Great,
Christine,
thank you.
yeah.
So we're on to the second public audience, since we only have one last member in the audience. Excellent. Thank you.
I don't think I've ever been quiet.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of the agenda. I appreciate everybody's attendance today. Want to wish you a happy holidays. There is no better way to celebrate the holidays than to attend the tri-board meeting next week. So I hope to see you there. It is the kickoff of our favorite time of year, that being the budget. So I really encourage everybody to be there next week.
I make a motion to adjourn.
You got enough.
We're adjourned, people. Thank you.